Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another Altenew YouTube Live today. I hope your Thursday is off to a good start, and thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm going to hang out here for a little bit while I'm waiting for some other folks to jump in. And then we'll get into the actual crafting that we're going to be doing today. So my name is Sara Newman, and I'm really excited to be doing this Altenew YouTube Live. I've been doing the Facebook Lives with them for, gosh, a couple of years now. And so this is an exciting new way to bring you some even more stamping ideas and all kinds of fun things. Oh, hello, Christine. Thank you for joining in. I'm so glad. Bonjour. I hope you are having a lovely evening there in France as well. So in the past, we've been starting our evening live sessions a little bit later. So now this is earlier, at least feels a lot earlier, the difference between 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night here in Germany. Christine says it's sunny and hot. Oh, lucky you. We actually had a sunny and hot day today here in Germany as well, but quite cloudy, so it feels a little bit muggy. But I'm convinced that summer is still on its way. Hello, Natalie. Oh, nice to see you there as well. Thank you for joining in. I have to say the comments kind of flash in and they flash away quite quickly. So I'm going to try and catch them as I can. So Megan is coming from Connecticut. Oh, beautiful, beautiful part of the world. Lynn, hi Lynn. Nice to see your name popping up there too. I'm glad so many of you are joining because I recognize a lot of those names from our Facebook Live. And I know it can be a little bit tricky, you know, when we change time and we change place. It's like moving a classroom or something. At school, and then everybody needs a little bit of time to come in. But this means that there's even more great stuff coming in from Altenew. So even more inspiration, which I really love, and I'm finding that this is a lot of fun. And we've got Lydia behind the Altenew badge. So as I mentioned, the comments scroll really quickly. They flash and then they go away. And I try and catch them all, but it can be a little bit tricky. So if I don't catch your comment, I will... Hopefully Lydia will catch it, and if not, then we will catch it tomorrow. And the question there I just saw was about the UK workshop. No, unfortunately, I will not be going. I wanted to, but it is coming at the same time that I have to go back to the US. My mom's having knee surgery, so I'm going to help her. So that's just, it's coming at the exact same time. So unfortunately, I'm not able to do both of those, but I wish I could go because I went last year and I had so much fun. It was great. And I would definitely 100% do it again, but I have to be there for my mom and her knee. So next year. So, oh, your first time catching the Altenew in a live. Oh, okay, great. Well, there are lots of lives and they're all fantastic. And the great thing is I love watching them live, but, or catching up with them later because usually I'm in bed. But, oh, thanks, Chris. If you do not catch the live while it's live, you can always watch it later. But if you do catch it while we are live, and you share while we're live, then you can be entered in for a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store, which is fantastic. And so I do offer that up to you. Now, as we are learning this new format, we're also learning that it's a little bit tricky for us to tell who has shared the video. And so if you can share while we're live, post that you shared it, and if you can let us know how you shared it, then that's also really helpful too. So that's just one of the things that I think is a little bit less intuitive for us at this point with YouTube. So my format is going to remain pretty much the same as with my Facebook Live. So generally I come up with a couple of card projects and I do them all and then show you the supplies that I work with, show you the cards that I'm doing or the projects, and then we get right into it. Hi, Teresa from Toronto. I'm glad to see you're here with us. Thanks for joining. So if that sounds okay with you, that's what I will do again for this. And today I've got a resist technique. an ink resist technique, although it also works for paint too. So you can take this technique and do some different things with it. But it works especially well with, you know, my favorites, the little Altenew dye-based inks. Now, of course, they do come in a larger size as well. You don't have to have the little ones, but this is what I tend to go with when I'm buying my inks. I like the size. I like that you can store them quite easily. I don't have a ton of space, so I'm always looking for good ways to save my crafting area space, and this is a great way to go about it. So we're going to be working with the dye inks and a couple of different stamp sets, some older ones that I pulled out of my stash that are some favorites, and probably you guys have these as well. And a surprise item that you probably have in your bathroom, which is petroleum jelly, Vaseline. So we're going to use this to create some resist effects that are going to give us some really fun backgrounds. So thanks you guys for sharing. Before I get into it, just one more quick notification for those who are just jumping in. If you are sharing our video while we're live, then you can be entered for a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store. And all you need to do is share and then post in the comments below that you shared it and let us know how you shared it. And that will make it easier for Lydia to pull whoever is going to be the winner of that $15 gift certificate. Have fun with that one too, by the way. Okay, so let's take a look at the stamps that I'm using today. So the first one that I want to share with you is the Heart Flowers set. And this is one, it's one of the smaller ones. So this is what, like 6 inches, 4 by 6 inches, I think. It's a smaller size. It packs a punch. There are a lot of these sizes, and I think that they're just a really good, versatile technique. Natalie, your comment just faded away. Tricks for opening the ink cubes. I have not had a problem with them. I do like that they're quite snug. They snap back on, which means that I don't have to worry about the lids coming off. That can be a bit of a trick. I haven't struggled with them. So maybe Lydia, if you caught that comment quicker than I did, maybe you can help. I think that was Natalie. So we'll get your question answered for you. The other thing about the Heart Flowers is that, of course, as a layering set, you're going to have a layering guide back here. You can layer them if you want to. You can also mix and match some of these with some of the other stamp sets. What I really like is the nice big scripty love here. Works beautifully for lots of different occasions. And you've also got 2 options here. So you've got the you sew, so you can say love you sew. And then you also have sending lots of. So you can kind of put one at the top or one at the bottom, or just use love as it is. So lots of good possibilities there. You also have the matching heart flower dies. So these are the dies that coordinate with those stamps, perfect size. You've got the flowers and you've also got the leaves, which I really like there too. So some nice detail on there. The other stamp set that I want to share with you tonight is the Mini Blossoms. And the Mini Blossoms is one that I use a lot, and the ones that I use the most on this set, these little guys here. These work so nicely just as little accent pieces on a card or on an envelope or on a tag, but there's something about these little silhouette blossoms that just make a really nice additional touch. This is also a layering die set or stamp set, and what you'll do is just go to the Altenew website and the product page, and you can print this off. And so what I tend to do is keep this with my stamps in one of those Altenew storage bags. I have a lot of those bags, and they are great for just kind of keeping everything together. Stamps, dies, everything else that you need. And so we're going to be playing with those. And we're also going to be playing with this little guy. It's the Billowing Blossoms. It's a really tiny stamp set. You can see in proportion to my hand. It's got 2 flower silhouettes, 2 leaves, and then you've got the flower innie. And I'll hold that up. I think you can see that you've got a really sweet little, very simple design, also done in lots of different ink colors. And I think it's just a really nice small size stamp, a great one to add into your mix. Okay, Christina's been looking for some small Altenew flowers. Well, yeah, you're right, because there are lots of really beautiful big blossoms, and the smaller ones are a lot of fun. So I'll show you. Let's see. Let's start with this one. I'll whiz through the card projects that I have for us, and then we'll get into the actual process. So here's one using those little blossoms and the Love You So. And I'm going to be detailing out how to do the background on here, because this is our resist technique. So the blue you can see here is our dye ink, and the white area is where we're using our petroleum jelly. And I'll talk a little bit more about this as well. So it's going to give you a really fun, kind of a distressed background, really easy to do, and works, of course, with any of your ink colors. So you can really play with that. That's on glossy cardstock. We'll also talk about how to use it on watercolor cardstock. And here's where you can see these heart flowers. And Christine, you can see in proportion to my hand, they're about, I don't know, maybe about 2 inches in diameter. So they're a nice small size. Of course, with the cutting dies, you can cut them out, pop them up onto some foam tape, mix and match and layer them. And this is just 2 of the flowers. So of course there are a lot more on that stamp set. So you've got a lot to play with, but it does make for a nice, you know, to create a frame or a cluster or a border, or just, you know, just one. And then we're going to look at the Billowing Blossoms as a resist focal. So this is my ink, and this is where I have stamped with the Vaseline, which I didn't know was possible, but it is. And this was my kind of first go with it. And then I did another one later, and I kind of like the results of this a little bit better. I think it's a little bit more crisp. So I think I have a trick for that. So I'm just going to share that one with you as we walk through the process. And then the last one, another background. Oh, you're into backgrounds? Me too. And the reason I like backgrounds, and especially having lots of different options for backgrounds, is because you can take your ink colors for your background and match them perfectly to your card focal. And I just think that that is such a, it sounds like, well, of course you can do that. But I think the more options you have for creating backgrounds, the more ways you can use your inks, which just lengthens the usage of them. And of course, you know, when you're spending money on your craft supplies, you want to be able to put them to use for lots of different things. Natalie's list is growing too. I know, mine too. Join the club. But this way, at least we will have some new ways to maybe refresh some of our favorite products and mix and match some things. So again, the inks that I'm working with are the dye-based inks, not the pigment inks. Altenew has some new pigment inks, but the dye inks for this. So we're going to be using those. I had a challenge to myself this time. I know a lot of you know that usually for my Facebook Lives, I'm either spattering watery ink with a water brush. You know, I love to do that. Or I am embossing, or I am using the Altenew framed dies. So these are 3 things that I do a lot. I spatter my dye inks. I use that, especially the golden peach. You know, I love that golden peach embossing powder, or the framed dies. And I told myself I could not do any of those 3 things for tonight. And I was successful, but it was hard. It's a challenge sometimes when you have certain techniques and products that you always count on. So I had to push myself. But I can't promise for next time. So maybe you guys find the same thing, that you using your same tools and supplies over and over again. So again, something a little bit new, the Vaseline. Now this is a technique that you may have learned before. It might be I consider it kind of a classic resist technique. You don't necessarily need to have the brand name Vaseline, but you do need to have a petroleum jelly. And sometimes you can find a store brand, but it does need to be 100% petroleum jelly. And I tried substituting with, I thought maybe a lip balm could do the trick, because it's also that same kind of substance, but it doesn't quite have the same effect. I think there's some other stuff in a lip balm besides just that same kind of petroleum jelly substance. So go with probably what you've got in your medicine cabinet or can easily access at the drugstore. Okay, So I'm going to now stand up, tilt you down, and we'll get into the crafting part of it. So hang in there with me as we do this. And hopefully you can see my work surface. Hang on a second. Okay, I think we're good. Perfect. I do have a resting kitty cat in here as well, so she may decide to make a little bit of noise, but she's been sleeping for a good long while, so I think we're safe. Okay, so let's start out with our first card. And again, I'll hold this a little bit closer so that you can see the stripes on here, and that's going to be our beautiful Teal Cave ink. Now I'm working onto glossy cardstock for this one, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of cardstock and paper that you can use for this technique. Glossy is my favorite, especially when starting out, because it's a nice slick surface. So it means that the ink won't get absorbed into it, it has to dry on top of it, being a non-porous surface. So I've got my Vaseline on hand. A couple of other things I need to have: a water mister. Of course, I need my ink, and I'll be using the Teal Cave, and I need to have some tissue. This is really drugstore crafting at its finest. So this is what is going to blot my ink and also help to sort of swoop away my Vaseline. And if you're wondering, does it make the cardstock really like greasy or slippery? It doesn't, because you're going to be wiping it away. So if you're thinking, ooh, that's just going to be a mess, it actually is not. So what I need to do here is just get a little bit of this on my finger. And I want to create some stripes on here. Now, the white areas on my card are the areas where I put the Vaseline. So that's acting as my resist. So I need to keep that in mind as I'm planning out my design here. So I'm going to just streak this on. I'm going to start with my stripe that's in the middle and then work out from the sides. And I know it's tricky to see it because it's clear, but when I hold this up, I think you'll be able to see the shine of this. So I'm not really glopping it on, but I am making sure that I'm going from top to bottom there. Can you see the shine of that? There, maybe there we go. Okay. And I started with my stripe in the middle because then you can sort of work out from either side rather than trying to start on one side and going all the way across. Okay, so I'm going to clean off my finger here and then make my watery wash. So I'm working onto my craft sheet. I'll just press that Teal Cave down onto the craft sheet, add some water next to it. And the reason, I think I've said this before, the reason I don't spray the water directly into the ink is because it can tend to kick back a little bit. This makes it just a little bit tidier. Now I have a little rubber brayer, and I'm going to pick up some of the water and run it through my watery ink. And then I'm just going to run this onto my Vaselined cardstock. And I'm going in the same direction as the stripes. You'll notice I'm not sort of running all over the place on here. And I think you can see where the white is where the Vaseline was, and it still is, and that is what is resisting the ink. It is quick. It is super quick. This is what I love about it. So I'm going to mop up my excess ink on here. Give my little brayer a bit of a clean. And now, as we talked about before, glossy cardstock is not porous, unlike a matte cardstock or like a watercolor paper that will absorb the water and the ink, but this does not. So what we need to do is blot this. I'm just putting my tissue right on top just to blot, especially that leftover Vaseline on there, so you can see where my stripes are. And then I'm going to really get in here and make sure to remove all of the Vaseline and all of the ink that was in that area. And once I have that done, then I can kind of buff this a little bit. I just don't want to start with any circular motion until I make sure that I've got all of that Vaseline off. Otherwise, I am really just smearing it around. And there you go. So now this is an easy, kind of a distressed looking background. You can, of course, experiment with how much Vaseline you're using, how wide your stripes are going to be. I do always tend to put it on with my finger rather than with like a brush. I wouldn't use a brush that would then get all gunky. But you could probably find some other small tools that could help you apply maybe a little bit narrower stripes. But I really like this technique for a fun, distressed background. And so that's what I've got going on here. And I've just trimmed that down and away we go. So now I do also want to take a look at our card focal on here. And for this piece, I'm using a matte cardstock, so not the glossy cardstock for this one. And I'm going to be mixing and matching my stamp sets. So of course I want to start with my heart flowers, and I want that great big love. So I'm going to peel off the love, and I'm using a block for this one. You can of course use your Misty, and I've got my Misty on hand just in case I need it. But sometimes for smaller stamps it's a little bit quicker to just use an old acrylic block. So I've got that loaded up, and I'm going to stamp it with one of my all-time favorite ink colors, which is Evening Gray. So rather than going for a really high contrast black, the Evening Gray I just find is one of those colors that gives you a beautiful look. It gives you the contrast, but it's also still quite soft. So let me ink this up on here, and then just put this down onto my matte cardstock. And here we go. So it's just a really beautiful soft gray color. And then I've also got another little sentiment down here. So this is one of the interchangeable sentiments on the stamp set. So you've got the Love You Sew. So I'll just dab off my love on here, pop it back in, and then grab the You Sew. Now would be a good opportunity to put on my glasses to make sure that I'm not doing it upside down. I don't know if I'm the only one who does that. But I'll get this on here. And I just want you to see how nicely they stack together. And let's get him lined up. And I'll pop this right down here, a little bit offset under my big scripty love word. So you can see I've got that ready to go. And then what I can do is play with my flowers on here. So the flowers that I'm using are from another stamp set. These are from the Mini Blossoms. And remember, the ones that I find super duper useful are these three little kind of posies, I guess you might call them. I'm not sure what sort of flower they are, if they are a specific flower of any kind, but they just work so beautifully as accent pieces. So I'm going to be using my Ocean Waves for this one, and I'll just pop one up here, and then another one. I'm going to do this one on the opposite side and here. And so you can see how sweet those little ones are. Now the other thing that you've got on that same set are some little tiny leaves. And I'm going to add some of those leaves, actually just one of them. And I'll put this on with Parrot. So I'll see if I can aim this little guy down here. You don't have to be too precise. I think with these, has a really fun kind of freeform look to it. And we'll come around over here. And then you have a really easy card focal. Oops, let me get the lid on there. That can be put down right onto your distressed background. So again, this is a great way that you're able to perfectly coordinate your ink. So even though I was using two different ink colors, you are really able to tie the whole thing together and to give a nice comprehensive look. And I also like the difference in texture with that glossy cardstock and then the matte cardstock. Now let me show you again the original card. One other thing a lot of people ask me about is my twine. So I'm going to show you my twine. This is, again, one of those supplies that I don't seem to be able to craft without. It's just a great big ball of, it's not really a thick twine. I buy this at my grocery store, and it's in the section of, like, they have some kind of office supply, school supply type of things, like glue sticks, and this is always in there. We also use it to tie back our roses in the garden, but it just adds a really nice sort of rustic look to just about anything. And so this is what I have used to wrap around the top of my card. And you'll notice, because that twine is a bit thick, I added this panel on here with foam tape, especially putting it around the bumpiness of that twine, just so that when I glue this on here, it doesn't sort of fold and flop over that thick twine. So this is card number 1, technique number 1, which I think is just such a great way to create a really easy, quick background for your cards. So moving on to Chris says she's out of money, but making a list for next payday. You and me both, Christine, you and me both. It's too hard. It's too hard to choose. And the other thing is, you know, like I said, these stamps are some that I've had for a really long time, and I find that I count on them. They're kind of my perennials. I know that if I make a card with these flowers, I can just pull them right out of my stash, and I can do just about any type of card. So here's one using the heart flowers, and I've got 2 different sizes on here. I've also got some of these stems that are a quick stamp and really easy to do. You can do the layering. You can also do single layers if you want to too. So let's talk about that. Let's start with our background, which is also using our dye-based inks and Vaseline and watercolor cardstock. So we used glossy cardstock, which is a nice slick cardstock before, and this time we're going to go with watercolor. And I bought a pad of watercolor cardstock at my local craft store. It was not very expensive. It was a nice big pad. You don't have to worry about getting like cold press or hot press. There are lots of different kinds of watercolor cardstock, but I find sometimes they'll call it like a student grade. It's a little bit less expensive, gives you more of the watercolor and paper, and it's often cut smaller to size, so you don't have to contend with a giant sheet that you need to cut down. So that's what I'm using here. Very simple student grade watercolor paper. And for this one, I'm going to use 2 of my favorites, Ocean Waves and Parrot. Oops, there we go. We were talking about lids before. And I'm also going to be working onto my craft sheet. But the first thing I want to do is get some of this Vaseline, once again, on my finger. And remember that wherever you put this is going to stay white. So I'm going to kind of scuffle this in randomly. I'm going to just do little dabs in here. And I'm going to have things going in some opposite directions. You don't need a lot of the Vaseline, almost as much on here as you would like if you were getting lip balm on your finger to apply. So it's not going to be a lot. You don't need to glop it on. A little bit will do. Okay, so I've got this on here. Again, I think it's just, oh, there we go. Now you can see where I've got it on there, where the shiny areas are. And then I'm going to take some of the Parrot and some of the Ocean Waves, and I'm just putting them right onto my craft sheet, which is what I work onto almost all the time. And I'm going to spray this with water find my brayer in here. And then I'm just going to brayer this a little bit just to kind of move it around, not to overwork it too much. Take my watercolor cardstock. Hi, Stacy. You're never too late for us. We love having you. So hello, Stacy's in New York. We're glad that you could join us. And I'm just going to pop this down here. I'm just dropping it straight in there. Oh, Megan, did you find some gray ink? Lydia will help you. We're good enablers, aren't we? And then I've got my watercolor on here. Now, if I wanted this to be moving around a little bit more, I can also add a little bit more water on here. I can reactivate some of this and come back and press this all on here so that just as much or as little coverage as you want. And you're just mopping up that inky color. And again, I need to clean this up a little bit. And I'll get out a fresh tissue. Same process as before. Pressing this down so that I can really blot away any of the Vaseline. You can see it's sticking a little bit. And then I can start burnishing this. Now it's a little bit wet, but because it's watercolor cardstock, I don't have to worry about it warping or buckling or tearing or getting fuzzy or anything that can happen to other kinds of cardstock. And there you go. Hi, Sue, you found the YouTube channel. I know, it's like we moved classrooms, isn't it? We're glad that you're here. Thanks for joining. So you can see this is the area where I had the Vaseline. Any of those white bits on here is where I've had that Vaseline and where it has resisted the watercolor. So let me show you here. Once it dries, it will then have this really soft look here, and you can see some of the bigger patches on here as well. And really the point of this is just to create a soft, beautiful background that gives you a little bit of color, a little bit of interest on your card, but also allows the message of your card to stand out and allows your stamping and whatever other embellishments you want to have on here so that those can all stand out as well. No, Megan, this is watercolor cardstock. So before it was glossy cardstock, and this is watercolor. Very inexpensive student grade watercolor cardstock. Thank you for sharing, Sue. Okay, so I also wanted to talk a little bit about the flowers on here. And I'm going to hold this up so that you can see those flowers. And again, it's just two of the same. So these two are the same, and then these ones right here. And I'm stamping in peach and also in fresh lemon. That's the other one that I was using on there. And this is that beautiful evening gray. So the soft gray on here as well. So let's take a look at that because I do want to show you how nicely these stamp. And again, these are the heart flowers. And I'm just going to grab, let's see, I'll grab this one here and to pull this off. So also keep in mind, you've also got your innies, you've got your layering options, you've got your layering directions on the back. I am going to point something out. And these are some other little stamps that I adore. This little 3-dot stamp, this little one over here, and then there's this circular one up at the top. They are meant to be the flower innies. Oh, and actually this little asterisk here too. They're meant to be the innies of the flower. So it's like the center of the flower. It's your detail part. I think that these, maybe it was because I was trying not to spatter my ink, but these little guys I think are just fun for stamping around randomly around on your background just to give an extra little bit of color, so, and texture, almost like some small pattern, and especially if you were to do it in that soft evening gray, I think it would be lovely. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my flower stamp on here, and I'll ink this one up with some fresh lemon. I'm really into yellows at the moment, so this fresh lemon is beautiful. Although I have to say, they have so many lovely yellow colors, like the honey drizzle is another really beautiful one. It's hard to pick my favorite yellow. So here you can see this is one of those heart flowers. And this is actually not one that I used on the card, but I'm glad that I pulled it off because then we can see some different ways to use it. So actually I meant to pull this one off, but let's play with this one. And actually what you would do is layer this inside portion on here, but let's grab another one. Let's grab one of these little innies. Maybe I'll get the smaller one here and let's play with this. Take that one off and let's see, we've got the fresh lemon. Why don't I do the innie with, let's see, Teal Cave is right in front of me. One of my favorites. And then just pop this down in the center. And you can see it's bright and fun, and I think would just be a really cool card focal. And then of course you've got your dies. I'm just going to grab one of them. It's not the correct one, but you'll get the gist of it. All you need to do then, of course, you've got your cutting side on one side and you've got your smooth side on the other. You're going to place that cutting side down, just twirling it around until you get the placement right. Run it through your die cutting machine. I use a little bit of masking tape on there, and that will send it right through and you will get a die cut piece. And I've got one to hand here. Actually, here's one that I did earlier. This is using Peach Perfect ink with the evening gray as the accent piece on that flower. And I think it is just, I mean, the two of them together could be layered up together. This one is a brighter one. This is a little bit more soft and subtle, but I think just a lot of fun. Oh, another little tip. When I'm working with a lot of small dies and I don't want to lose any of my dies in my shuffle, I use these are like magnetic, you know those magnetic or magnetized business cards? You can buy those blank in the craft store and they're really great just to kind of have on hand to keep your small dies together as you're working so they don't, you know, they can tend to wander off sometimes. So those are the flowers. I'm going to share with you though, I just want to show you the leaf here. Now the leaf has, of course, the innie and the outie. So it's got the detail and it's got the silhouette. I really like using just the leaf though by itself. I think that is just such a sweet little accent. And you could, if you're placing it, I mean, I've got this over here if I wanted to die cut it. But of course, you could just add that right as part of your flower. Oh, a magnetic dish from the hardware store. Megan, that's brilliant. That's a really good idea. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so those are the flowers, and that's what I've done to create the border on here. You can see those are my leaves and my blossoms on here. Again, I use Peach Perfect and Fresh Lemon for this, and then the Evening Gray on here. I didn't worry too much about the centers because I had some little metal accents that I was putting on there. Here's some more of my twine just wrapped around, as you can see, the front of my panel, and everything's adhered with foam tape, so it makes it quite easy. Okay, so let's move on to another of our techniques here. And this is one that I want to share with you because this is quite quick and easy, and it was one that I had not done before and kind of surprised me. So again, I'm going to be working on glossy cardstock for this one. And this is the Billowing Blossoms. And I have my Billowing Blossoms already put onto my acrylic block. And again, this is the Billowing Blossoms. So I'm using all of them except for the innie and this flower here. And I'm going to stamp with the Vaseline. So for this, I need to somehow apply the Vaseline to the stamps without glopping it on, which would, even if I'm careful with my finger, I would definitely end up glopping it on. So I've got a little foam piece here, and this is not really absorbent. It's kind of like a sponge, and I'm just going to slide out a bit of this. I'm kind of like skimming it on the side of the jar. And I'm not squashing it on, but I am tapping it on like I would my ink. And I'm just going to kind of pat this on here. Make sure I've got it on all the areas of my stamp. And then I'm going to stamp this. So this is glossy cardstock. So the thing I want to make sure not to do is not to slide, which was what I did the first couple of times. So I need to hold this pretty stable as I'm pressing it. And then I think you can probably see as I lift this off. Speaking of lids, I keep knocking this one off. Okay, I think you may be able to see, can you see that shine as I'm moving it? Oh, there we go. So you can see that is where I have stamped with that Vaseline. Now, the card project that I used, or that I did, was using the Deep Iris as my ink resist. And let's see, I did another one using the Ruby Red. So let's see, for this one, why don't we try, got lots of these colors in front of me. Why don't we try, shall we try the Teal Cave for this one? So again, I'll just put some of my ink right onto my craft sheet, add some of my water on here, and then pick this up with my brayer. Now, when I brayer this on here, I want to be pretty gentle. I don't want to, you know, kind of scrumble all over here. I just want to make sure that I'm applying the ink on here without sort of moving any of that Vaseline around. And I definitely want to make sure that I'm getting enough ink on. So I'm going to give this a try. So again, I'll mop up some of this, and I'm kind of letting that pool and dry the ink as I clean this up. So there's no rush on here. In terms of cleaning your actual stamp, what I found is that if you're not adding a ton of Vaseline on here, it's not like it's really slippery or anything. All you'll need to do is clean this as you normally would. So don't worry about if the Vaseline is going to be an issue for your stamps. I did not find it to be so. Okay, so I'm going to grab my tissue and pop this down here. And again, I'm just blotting. And you can see that that has resisted. So again, I'm just going to be turning the tissue around as I go. So I'm always working with a clean-ish part. And then I'm going to start to buff some of that color. And you can press a little bit more as you're cleaning this off to really make sure that you've gotten all of the ink off of the areas where you've got that Vaseline. So that's going to create another resist. And I played around with this a little bit, and I found that bold silhouette stamps work really nicely for this technique, as opposed to something quite detailed probably isn't going to be quite as effective. It's just not going to stand out as much. But the trick that I noticed between this one, where you can see there's still a little bit of purple in this part of the blossom and a little bit here on that leaf, has to do with blotting before you start buffing. So the same process we did before, where you just kind of put down the tissue and let that absorb straight up from that area, that tended to be a little bit more helpful. And I also found that if you get any stray marks, like I did on here, yeah, that's going to show up too. So just things that I learned as I was doing this, but I think it is a really fun process to do. And I think can give you a really sweet little card focal on here. And of course the Love You So is also from the stamp set. So that is our third technique. And I think we do have time for one more. So I want to show you, this one is a little bit more distressed. And this is more of that glossy cardstock. So I'm moving back to that. And this is two colors. So I've got, this is Ocean Waves and Dark Chocolate. So I've got these together. The Billowing Blossoms here as on my card focal. And then I've also got the Love, and I've got the sentiment on here as Love You. So I'll show you the trick to how I get the Love You from the stamp set, because that's not on there as it is on my card. So I'll show you how I did that. Okay, so I've got my glossy cardstock, and I'm going to start out, let's see, what did I have on here? Ocean Waves and Dark Chocolate. So the first thing I need to do is brayer on Ocean Waves. So I don't have any Vaseline on here right now, but what I'm going to do is get this nice and watery. So a little bit more water on here. And again, just grab my brayer and brayer the color right onto my cardstock. So I don't need to have it covering the whole piece, but I just need to have something on here. Maybe I want to add a little bit more color. And mop this up. Now this is still a little bit wet. I can speed it up with a heat tool. But this will dry pretty quickly. So the next step is going to be coming back in with my Vaseline. And remember, the areas that I apply the Vaseline, that's where it's going to be a resist. So my next color being dark chocolate, my next color is going to be wherever I'm not putting the Vaseline. And I think before that comment flashed by, I think it was, do you always use glossy cardstock? Not necessarily. This card project is using watercolor cardstock. So you can use, I thought I would try the extreme from glossy being non-porous to the watercolor cardstock being, of course, very porous. So you can use lots of different kinds of paper and cardstock for this one. So you can experiment, but watercolor and glossy are two of my favorites. Okay, so I've got my Vaseline on here. Again, you can see that. And let's come in with some dark chocolate. The ink, not the real thing, unfortunately. So again, I'll add some of this on here. Quick spritz of water, and I'm going to make my wash. And then add this on here. This gives a really cool distressed sort of two-tone look. It almost looks a little bit like weathered wood, but you can see how pretty that looks. I love it with the high contrast. I think this color combination also is great for masculine cards too. And so I wanted to be able to share that with you. So I've got this on here now. Again, I'm going to grab another tissue and blot this off. And just pick up that excess ink, first of all, and my excess Vaseline. And then just streak this on here. And I'm just picking up any of the excess. And then I can start working in a little bit more circular motion just to make sure that I'm buffing off any excess Vaseline, any excess ink. Oops, I think I can see a little bit over here. And there we go. So it makes just such a cool, I think, weathered wood. I think it just looks very antique, distressed. But again, it's not such a background that will overwhelm whatever you're putting it onto, whatever you're putting onto the front of your card. So in this case, I've got that beautiful floral collection. So these are the two flowers from the Billowing Blossoms and then some of the leaves on here. And this is done with ocean waves as well as dewdrops ink. And then parrot, and I think this one was frayed leaf. I tend to go with frayed leaf for many of my leaves. So I've just got that on here. And then the Love You, so this is another thing. Let me grab my stamp set again here, because on the heart flowers, you've got the sentiment love, and then you have sending lots of, which could be at the top, and then you so. So if you wanted to say love you so, you just put those two together and you're ready to go. If you only wanted it to say love you, maybe you were strapped for space or you just wanted it to say something different, you're going to take your stamp. Looks like I've got some tissue on here. You're going to take your stamp. This is the one that says you sew, and you'll need to, let me just clean this off quickly. You'll need to use a little bit of either masking tape or maybe washi tape. I'm going to pop this down here. Grab your tape, just a little tiny piece, and you need to mask off the word sew. Just put a piece of tape, literally masking it off. So I have you, and then sew is covered up. Let me find a piece of scrap paper that I can stamp this onto. And then what you'll do is ink up your stamp, and I'm using the dark chocolate on here. And so I've got ink on the tape piece. I need to remove the tape piece. And then when I stamp this, it will just be the word you. So that's one way. If you have words on your stamp set and you want to eliminate one of them for whatever reason, that's one way you can do it. So just be sure when you do this, remove the tape before you actually stamp, and then you will be able to create your own bespoke word. So that's what I've done on here, because I just wanted to fit in the you in there between the plant, the foliage on there. Yes, these would be perfect for Father's Day cards as well. And I do really like that not only are you able to get some really interesting backgrounds, but you can swap out your colors. I mean, if you could see all of the ink pad colors that I've got here, there's just so much that you can mix and match and combine. So you could do the ruby red with the evening gray, you could do the lavender fields, you could do the peach perfect, the parrot, any of these, and of course all of my really super extra favorites, which are the beautiful teals and blues. They work beautifully with brown as well. So if you're looking ahead to Father's Day, which in the US is coming up this weekend, this is a great option for you. Okay, so I'm going to run through again the cards just quickly, just as a reminder. So we've done our first one, our stripes onto stripes onto glossy cardstock. Then we've done our sort of ink pad press with watercolor cardstock to create that really soft watercolor background. We've also done stamping with the Vaseline, which gives us some really cool effects. And here's the one that we did tonight, which is an improvement, I think, on the one that I did the other day. So I'm quite pleased with how that's working out. And then our weathered wood background on here as well. So some really fun techniques I think you can do, all with something that you probably have in your medicine cabinet already. Okay, so I'm gonna stand up and tilt you up again and just show you another quick look, another quick look at the projects or the products that we're working with. Hello again. So we were working with the Mini Blossoms set, and again, tons of options on here. and lots of different layering possibilities. If you've got your set, you can, I just downloaded that from the Altenew product page. And then we have the heart flowers. If you are looking for small flowers and a beautiful scripty love, this is a great one. You can layer them up or not. The heart flowers also has the coordinating die, which makes life a lot easier. And then the last one we were playing with is the Billowing Blossoms. And of course, all of the beautiful Altenew dye inks. So lots and lots to choose from there. So again, don't forget to share our YouTube live today. Let us know that you shared and let us know how you shared. You can be in for a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store. And you can save money with your Vaseline and your tissues and have a lot of fun with those inks and those stamps. Thank you so very, very much for joining us today. And I hope you have had a great time with us. I will be back again quite soon for another YouTube live. And I can't promise that I will resist the urge to spatter or use the framed dies or my golden peach embossing powder. So we'll see if I have any more willpower left for it's the end of the month that I'll be doing another YouTube live with Altenew. So I will keep you posted on that. Thank you, as always, to the lovely Lydia for everything. The lovely Lydia handles so much. Thank you very much, Lydia, for keeping us all on track and getting all of those product information. So also a big thank you to Altenew for letting us connect like this. Okay, you guys, I will sign off for the evening. I hope you all have a wonderful evening or day, and I will catch you again soon. Okay, take care, you guys. Bye-bye.